you don't hear much about Borneo. 6 months ago, what I knew about Borneo could fit on a postage stamp. Better yet, in a tweet. Like so many things in my formative years, the word Borneo was introduced to me in a song, a Tori Amos song called Cloud on My Tongue. It was released on her seminal 1994 album, Under the Pink. I think I actually had it on cassette tape.
Leave me with your Borneo, I said I don't need much to keep me warm, and don't stop now. What you doing, my ugly one? Bring them all here, or to hide out 100 girls in.
I was an emotionally fragile 14, on the road to self-awareness, quasi-feminism, and an addiction to music I hoped never to quit. Tori Amos has nothing to do with the real Borneo. Like most of her songs, this one was about romantic tension, regret. It stuck with me. To this day, I still know the lyrics. Great song. If Anthony Bourdain's travels are informed by food, mine are informed by music. So while on the surface, Tori Amos and Indonesia seem to be the most disparate of references, they are forever linked in my mind. In film, music is the soundtrack to action. In my life, action was the visual track to music. Music was always there, it was first, like some primordial goo. It seemed to always exist. By my preteen years, everything I did had to have a soundtrack. I bathed to music, I slept to music, and who knows how many hours I spent compiling mixtapes. Alone in my room, I dreamt of the life that would eventually measure up to the grandeur of the sounds I was hearing. I knew Stereolab would best be experienced on the streets of Paris, and Radiohead was London. I pictured myself there, usually somewhere far from home and very foreign. Music and travel thrill me as much now as they did then. Back to Borneo. The second and last piece of knowledge I had about Borneo is that it is home to more species of wildlife than anywhere else in the world. Is it really 1 million? Lonely Planet described the Klatok experience as African Queen meets National Geographic. I was intrigued. Klatoks are covered houseboats that ply the Sungai Sekanyur, a narrow river snaking through the jungle of southwest Kalimantan, which is what Indonesians call Borneo. The river empties into the Java Sea. Brunei and Malaysia claim the northern tip of this, the world's third largest island, while Indonesia claims the majority of the land. The Sungai Sekanyur is remote enough not to have a dedicated Wikipedia page, and only the least reliable regional carriers fly there, or don't, even when you have a reservation. We were flying there, not just to get on a boat, but to see apes, specifically semi-wild orangutans living in Tanjung Puting National Park. The massive park, some 4,000 square kilometers, would allow us to get up close and personal with some of the 6,000 wild orangutans living there. The single largest population in the world. We started to fill at home on the Borindo, our private houseboat, the first morning. Less because of comfort or amenities, there were none, and more because of our chatty, youthful guide, Dean. Our crew included a captain, first mate, and a cook, all dutifully servicing us and the Clodagh. Our guide spoke just enough English to be helpful and humorous. "How can you tell which is the male proboscis monkey?" we asked about the wild monkeys we were seeing overhead. "Oh, it's the one with the chili pepper," replied our nominally Muslim guide. Our captain was a sweet-faced, quiet old man who never introduced himself. I could feel him watching me the same way that I watched the monkeys. He spoke to me only once to say, "You really like animal, yeah?" We speculated that the cook, missing more than a few teeth, was his wife. She never spoke either, but when we complimented her meals, she smiled. The captain's mate was a hollow-cheeked young man with a thin, muscular frame who did not hesitate to strip down to his underwear and plunge into the crocodile-infested river upon completion of laborious tasks like scrubbing the outside of the boat. And though only our guide spoke to us, we felt like a functional, if distant, family, us sitting on the upper deck like Rajas, and the crew working tirelessly to meet our every need and desire. Less than an hour into the lazy trip down the river, and our guide pointed out a family of proboscis monkeys just 50 feet away and 20 feet up. Respites on the boat are perfect times for contemplation, writing, or just plain sleep. The invading humidity inspires plenty of that. As scattered raindrops eased into a steady downpour, the crew lowered plastic tarps halfway, with the awning allowing for a view of the shimmering palms. A swift breeze was the best part, with the rumble of distant thunder providing backup to the soundtrack of sawing insects and the faint squeals of monkeys. We were pleasantly surprised at the masterpiece our cook whipped up, and what I could only imagine was a single pot stove and 4 feet of vertical space. I never really went below deck, not wanting to intrude on the crew's minuscule private space. Our first lunch on the Clodagh had us licking our lips. Whole fried fish, bathed in the sweet and salty soy garlic sauce, sautéed greens, and tempura battered eggplant. Make no mistake, it's hot, really hot. But the alternative, a dingy wooden lodge with limited electricity, can't beat the experience of sleeping under the stars. My husband says being fed 3 meals a day by a cook is not camping. But for this city girl, it's pretty close. By evening, when we were plagued by insects, he conceded that this is indeed camping. The Clodagh was outfitted with a toilet, sink, and shower, none of which are plumbed. None of this mattered too much. The cold river water shower was very refreshing after the hot jungle trek. Our half-mile hike to Camp Leakey, feeding site number 1, took just long enough to pique our anticipation of seeing orangutans in the wild. Well, semi-wild. These orangs were rescued from the black market, raised at the camp, and released into the fenceless Tanjung Puting National Park. As soon as we were lined up to see them, the orangs were lined up to see the park ranger who would deliver their 3 o'clock meal, a milky formula that looked nothing like bananas. In all, 10 orangs descended on the feeding platform, presided over by an imposing dominant male with puffy cheeks named Yanni. Yanni decided who ate when, squeezing his wide head into the plastic bowl first, then emerging with the white stuff dripping down his face. Orangs of all ages moved in cautiously, and when it wasn't their turn to feed, Yanni gave them a gentle push away or a bite on the hand. There's nothing like being 5 feet away from wild apes. I had read all the precautionary literature warning that orangs would steal anything you didn't bolt to your person and that you shouldn't look them in the eye. Our guide mentioned none of those things, and nothing of the sort took place. The orangs regarded us mostly with indifference, and a few times with spitting. 15 DSLRs snapping at a furious pace did nothing to irritate the great apes, which hung languidly overhead, sometimes just a few feet away. Eye contact was made at no risk to life or limb. Upon returning to the boat, our intuitive cook presented tea, coffee, and deep-fried bananas, without an ounce of intentional irony. As the Clawtuck ambled down the increasingly narrow river, proboscis monkeys became more and more easy to spot, clustered in trees along the bank, sometimes in families of 10. A rain shower did nothing to damper a nursing baby and its mother, balanced precariously, head drooped in slumber. She jerked to semi-alertness every few minutes, and when the baby finished, it turned to face us, as curious as we were. A powerful thunderstorm illuminated the sky and shook the boat the first night, which led to inevitable Life of Pi comparisons, especially when I realized my husband had a Swiss Army knife tucked into his pants. Sleep came in waves, and we woke just before dawn to a growing symphony of birds, instruments being added one by one. Phew, we made it through the night. The crew rolled up our tarps to reveal a family of macaques just inches away from the boat, eyeing us with as much interest as we had in them. They gladly retrieved bananas we perched in nearby branches, but wouldn't collect the one we left on deck. A few minutes later, as the sun started to break through the clouds and a swift breeze passed through, we happened upon a group of proboscis monkeys leaping dramatically from tree to tree. We cheered each happy landing, most of them swinging with Olympic athleticism. The humans erupted in another cheer of awe and applause when the monkeys leapt one by one into the river, belly flopping into the coffee-colored water. Our guide told us they cross when boats are passing, knowing that the sound of motors scares the crocodiles. We hope to see a croc, of course, but not one munching on anything small, gray, or furry. Day 2 on the Clawtuck allowed for 2 hikes to feeding sites. We ventured to the heart of Tanjung Puting, Camp Leakey, another half-mile walk through the singing rainforest. A large female orangutan named Siswi was tucked under a raised house in near slumber. Dean told us she was the queen of the forest, but had been jilted by her king. She would follow him everywhere, the guide said, but he was indifferent. To our surprise, a long-armed gibbon joined the meal, hopping with seeming hydraulics from tree to platform, only to be waved away by the dominant male, Pono Rogo. The gibbon, named Boy Boy, obliged temporarily, but eventually worked his way into the meal, and there sat 3 adult orangutans, 1 baby, and a wiry gibbon, all drinking out of the same bowl. Pono Rogo, age 27, eventually wandered off, and a female with baby in tow followed suit, but took her meal to go, the large plastic bowl tucked under one arm, baby in the other. A tempestuous rain descended, and I was so wet, my fingertips withered. By the time we reached the boat, we were completely soaked through, but also much cooler than on the walk there. Sisui was sitting on the boat dock, as if to bid us farewell, and I swear, she even held still long enough to convince me she was posing for a photograph. We climbed through the top decks of the 2 boats roped to ours, and I could still see the orangutan looking wistfully at her departing fans. Our park ranger grabbed her hand to lead her away from the deck, to which she responded with a solid flop on the ground, much like a cantankerous toddler, but not making a sound. She wrapped her feet around the wooden railing in protest. A few minutes later, she allowed the ranger to escort her by the hand, away from her adoring fans. Our river journey was over far too quickly, and soon we were back on dry land in Pangkalanbun, where our guide Dian took us for a stroll through town to kill time before our flight to Bali. The squalor of Pangkalanbun was something I wished not to exploit by photographing it. The definition of shantytown, stilted wooden houses piled up next to a questionable water supply of a river. The planked walkway looked like it would collapse at any moment as we passed food vendors peddling fried goods, children crouched on the ground, and feral cats, all curiously missing most of their tails. I felt like an intruder, as most of the homes, if you can call them that, had no doors on them. There was no flooring, no carpet or tile, no furniture, just shoes arranged neatly at the door. Were there really people living there? At the airport, we were treated to a thick cloud of cigarette smoke for 3 hours as we waited in the outdoor lobby. A blonde German woman approached me to ask about our Klondike experience. She had just arrived from Java to begin her journey. She was looking for a guide and a boat. I enthusiastically recommended Dian and the Burindo and handed her the palm leaf fan Dian made us. I felt as if I were passing a scepter to this young woman, the new Raja. Bon voyage. Enjoy the journey.